So much for making the time to join us today. We'll get started.
Imagine this. Your grant proposal becomes an irresistible narrative, effortlessly captivating with both purpose and brevity, ultimately achieving the funding that you desire. Well, hopefully you won't have to imagine it for much longer, because today we'll be showing you how to do just that. So join us in this, hopefully, transformative workshop, where we'll delve deep into the art of persuasive and purposeful writing, empowering you to craft compelling narratives that not only achieve your goals, but also leave a lasting mark on all those who read it. This workshop is your guide to finding success in every meticulously crafted sentence you write. So, without further ado, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Vitek. I'm a digital writing specialist with a particular focus in video production.
My name is Em. I've done grant applications with nonprofits in the Jane and Finch area before.
Hi, my name is Isabel, and I work with digital writing and design.
Hi, I'm Dia, and I'm a communication specialist with 16 years of work experience.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a professional writer who specializes in digital writing. Today, we will begin with a land acknowledgement before moving into a warm-up activity for us to understand your goals. We will then take you through outlining your grant proposals while keeping your audience in mind. Once that's done, we will delve into the 4 C's of communication to help you write like a pro. Unfortunately, we won't have the time to delve deep into all the components of grant writing, so grant applications. So we will be focusing on the writing aspect of these grant proposals. With this, we want to give you a hands-on experience on how to write these proposals effectively. So please participate. This is a safe space and we're all here to learn. You can use the chat function or unmute yourself to share your ideas. And don't worry about taking notes. Brian and Anda will share these slides with you, along with other helpful resources that we've designed to help you write.
I'd like to start by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today. So as Chelsea Vowell, a Métis woman from the Plains Cree speaking community of Lac Saint Anne, Alberta, writes, "The fact of Indigenous presence should force non-Indigenous peoples to confront their own place on these lands. York University's land acknowledgement may not represent the territory that you're on right now, so we ask that you each take responsibility to acknowledge your traditional territory and its current treaty holders. York University acknowledges its presence on many traditional Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It's now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to share and care for the Great Lakes region. We acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. In recognizing that these spaces occupy colonized First Nations territories and out of respect for the rights of Indigenous people, all of us should look for how our grant proposals can uphold our collective responsibility to recognize colonial histories and the present-day implications of residential schools and colonialism on Indigenous families and communities.
Thank you, Em. Before we begin, we'd like to know a little bit more about the grants that you're applying for. So, can you tell us in the chat which sector would best describe the primary focus of your grant proposals? Education, healthcare and wellness, technology, environment, social justice, or other? So just take a second to let us know in the chat. All right, I see environment/technology, education and technology. Do we have any others? Social justice. So this is quite a diversity of different fields that you're all engaged in. So there are 2 things that we can infer from your responses. Number one, the audience will be different in each of these sectors. And number two, the way you communicate with them will change accordingly. So let's begin with your audience. Imagine for a moment that you're buying a thoughtful gift for a loved one, be it for a birthday, holiday, whatever the case. Well, personally, I'm fond of collecting old books, but I've realized that most people don't seem to share this passion. So I probably wouldn't buy my 13-year-old sister a vintage copy of The Old Man and the Sea. In fact, what I want is completely irrelevant. When I'm buying her a gift, I think about what she wants and try to focus on her own tastes and preferences. So why not use the same common sense when choosing words and content that'll be valuable to your reader? Effective writing demands that we shift our focus away from what we want to what our audience wants. The key lies in understanding the wants and needs of our reader so as to present our ideas in a way that is meaningful to them. Henry Ford, the founder of both the assembly line and the first automobile, famously said, "If there is any one secret to success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own." So, next time you write, pause for a moment and attempt to stand in the shoes of your reader. Pause and ask yourself, just as you would when buying a gift, what does my audience want? How can you make them want to do it? What do I want my audience to do, think, or feel? Effective writing is not only about putting our desires into words, however eloquent that may be. It also requires doing so in a way that resonates with the wants and needs of your audience. And in doing so, we may hope not only to grab their attention, but also to influence their actions, hopefully in a way that benefits both parties equally.
Thanks, Vitek. So, most grant applications will kind of ask you a bunch of questions. They could be anywhere from like your organizational goals, your project background, the evidence of need, how your project kind of meets the grant criteria, how will you evaluate and monitor the project, your project's budget, and your project's timeline. These prompts may be in a question answer format or may require you to kind of provide them in a proposal format. So in this workshop, we will work with you to answer all of these questions. In workshop 1, we will handle the first 6 questions, and in workshop 2, we will work with how to answer a question like, what your project timeline is. So let's get started with workshop 1. Now let's take VTech's audience focus strategy to organize our grant proposals. But before you can start writing, you need to identify the what, why, how, and when of your project, right? So we will be using Danforth Animal Rescue just to give you an example to work with in this workshop as our use case, right? So Danforth Animal Rescue provides comprehensive medical care and shelter to abandoned pets in Toronto to ensure a healthier and more successful future for a diverse range of animals. This is what they do. Now, let's get into the what. Now, we'd really love it if you guys participate in the section because this will help you kind of work through your own goals as well. So the what essentially means, your project goals and, a key summary of your project. So what are the key things that your audience needs to know about your project? Include your project's goal in this section and kind of tailor it as a SMART goals. If you're not sure about what SMART goals are, they're basically specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So let's work with our example, Danforth Animal Rescue. We've kept the description of Danforth up here just for you to reference. What do you think for an organization like Danforth would be a specific goal? And you please feel free to unmute yourself or just type it in the chat. remember that Danforth is kind of like an organization that helps give medical care and shelter to abandoned pets in Toronto.
Could be providing like services for compassionate services for animals that might be in danger, and for any other animals that maybe, let's say this way, not be claimed by anyone or don't have like an owner. Abandoned or finding it, like for example in a forest or in the neighborhood, and no one was able or capable to take care of them financially or emotionally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great answer, by the way. We didn't think of such a thought out answer. Anyway, yeah, absolutely. So providing these compassionate and medical services to abandoned animals in Toronto, right? So for them, they're kind of looking location-wise, they're looking at just Toronto. So now, do you think this is specific enough? Because how many pets are you kind of targeting, right? So for this example, let's say 1,000 animals, 1,000 abandoned pets. So now let's move on to measurable. Does this look measurable to you?
To me,
As in to everybody, yes, and you can answer as well.
As a target, or
Yeah.
it might be specific, will be measurable. Not sure because it could be probably like less than 1,000. So I would say maybe.
Okay, so see, this is an example we're working with, so there are no wrong answers, literally. Okay. Yeah, so let's say if we're going with if this organization wants to help 1,000 abandoned pets, then you measure their success by whether they've actually helped 1,000 animals, right? By the end of their project. So for now, let's say yes, but it's not completely measurable. It's still partially measurable. And we'll come back to that. Do you think this goal is achievable? Now, let me give you a hint here. You ideally don't want to say that your goal is not achievable because you want the funding. So what do you guys think? What will be the answer here?
I'm seeing a yes in the chat.
Oh, great. Amazing. Yes, you would definitely want to say yes in this section, but you also have to keep in mind that you work through the details of your achievable section, right? So you have to make sure that the money that you're asking for makes sense in terms of what the project is going to deliver and how you are going to use that funding in what ways to make sure that your project is successful and it's completed by the time that you're kind of proposing it to be complete. So achievable, always yes, remember that. But make sure that you do your background strategy and your, just check the numbers. Now, is this goal relevant? So for relevant, think in two ways, right? So the goal has to be relevant to you because obviously it's your project and the project has to be somehow relevant to what you're doing and the cause you're kind of working towards. And it also has to be relevant to the funding organization. Now that is more important because let's say Danforth is an animal rescue organization. If they're applying to an organization like, say, PETA, that makes sense because PETA fights for animal rights. And so their values kind of align with each other. But let's say if Danforth was applying to, let's say, a bank, which has no history of helping animals whatsoever. They've worked in other causes, but never supported animal-related causes. Then it's a bit they might not accept your proposal, right? Because it's just not relevant to them. So for the sake of this example, we'll say yes, it's relevant. Let's say they're applying to PETA. Okay. Now time bound. We'll say that, time, let's say it's like, I don't know, June 2024 or something. You guys will have for your own grant applications, you will have your own timelines. And so you make sure to put those timelines. Now, let's go back to measurable. Now, do you think this goal is measurable? We have the services we're providing. We're telling them how many animals we're targeting to rescue, and we're telling them by when we'll do it. What do you guys think? Is this measurable now?
Yes.
Yes, this is not a trick question, guys. Yes, you're absolutely right. This is now way more measurable than it was before. All right, now let's give you another example, just in case, and Dan, for the animal rescue wasn't really relatable to you guys. Let's say you are organizing an event and you're applying for a grant to basically organize that event. In that case, you kind of need to mention what kind of an event it is, like what is the purpose of the event, any keynote speakers you're inviting, how is this event going to help the audience, the people who will be coming to the event, how much money is it going to require? So like, how are you spending that money in terms of like catering, venue booking, things like that, and any other resources that you may need to kind of promote the event and make sure that you get the attendance that you're hoping for. And obviously you would have to at least mention a tentative date, even if like you don't have a concrete date yet. So this section, the what section of your proposal, kind of provides a very concise snapshot of your project and tells the audience in one glance what they need to know about your project. But you will have to elaborate things a little bit more to give them that extra push. Sarah is going to take you through why.
The why. So this is where your audience's needs come in. Why does your audience need to know about your project? Here is where we can start to give them some background. Remember how we just worked on the specifics and relevance of your goal? Well, in this section, you can elaborate more on those. Here is where we would include your statement of need, which is where we would describe the population that your project is serving. We can offer some background information on why your project is important, and we can speak to what gap your project fills within your chosen field. Additionally, here's where we can explain how your project aligns with the funding organization, aka your audience. We can also begin to refer to any of the past projects that may be similar to yours or that are in the same field that your funding organization has contributed to. And this will show that you've done your due diligence on your funding organization and that you're not just randomly applying to them. So with that said, let's apply this information to Danforth. Once again, we have the little description of Danforth at the top of the slide, just as a reminder. And I ask you, why does the audience need to know about their project? Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. And just to phrase it another way, what is the value that Danforth Animal Rescue is offering the City of Toronto?
Maybe something like, I don't know, that they're going to rescue all these animals and like kind of give them shelter and food and things like that, kind of help them out because other people are unable to care for them.
Yeah, thank you, Dia. We could say that there is an
Can it,
abandoned.
sorry.
Sorry, please go ahead, Fernando.
Can we mention that it could be taking care of those pets, but in a, I don't know how to tweak these words, but like in a professional way, or
Mhm.
taking care by professionals, people who are like built in the field of like specialists, let's say, who might be taking care of those pets.
Yes, thank you, Fernando. That's a great answer. So we could say we have compassionate veterinarians that are offering medical care and shelter to these abandoned pets. Anything else?
Perhaps removing risk from the community.
Absolutely, Laura. Thank you. And could you say more about what you mean when you say risk?
It could be animals with rabies. It
Yeah.
could be coyotes in the park. It could be a whole bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then once again, in this section, if we want to think about the relevance to the funding organization, here's where we can be a little persuasive, right? For example, like as Dia mentioned, if the grant issuer is PETA, then we know that they do deal with animals, and then we can tailor this information in a way where it's at the top of their priorities and they would want to contribute to our grant. So thank you for all of those responses. And once again, keep in mind that this why section is where we can, oh, sorry, I see Kamisha in the chat. Having these animals going up for adoption, yeah. Once again, that would be speaking to filling a gap in the market, a particular niche that the animal rescue is operating in. And yeah, so all of this information really works to explain, it really works as a persuasive push as to why your project should exist and why it should receive the funding. And just in case, once again, the animal rescue is a little far-fetched from your project, we can think about a project that's maybe about climate change. In that instance, the why, we would be including details such as why you're interested in the topic, the impact of climate on your community, and how your project is different from the other climate change initiatives. Within the why, we really want to be persuasive and thoroughly explain our niche and our position within our chosen field. With that said, let's see where we can go from here.
So once you have the what and the why sort of handled, I guess, it's now important to tell your audience how you're going to achieve your goals. So you've explained to them what you do and what your project is about and how, and why you're doing this. But the funding organization needs more information about how you are actually going to execute this project for them to decide if they're going to fund you or not, right? So in this section, you should provide things like, a better detailed description of your project, your methodology. Methodology is like a step-by-step process of how you're going to do the things you're saying you're going to do. And then the type of resources you will need, what you already have, and what the funding organization needs to give you, and how you will basically measure the success of your project, right? So in case of Danforth, what are some of the things do you think a funding organization would need to know about how they're going to execute their project? Think about yourselves as the funding organization. You are going to give Danforth your own personal money. right? So think about it. It's you can't just give it to them just like that. So now think through that lens. What are some of the things you will need to know before you commit the money?
This is Laura here. I'd like to know what their financial plan is and how they're going to allocate the funds, whether it's all to the guest speakers, the venue, are they feeding people who are attending? Are the animals going to be looked after while you're learning, etc.?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. So, yes, so there are two examples here. In one case, in the case, if you're doing like if you're organizing an event, then yes, like you need to know exactly like you said, you need to know what their financial plan is and how they plan to use that money to organize that event. And also for Danforth Animal Rescue, it's important to know the same, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like if you're if you're telling that you're gonna help 1,000 animals, it's gonna cost you money. You need to have a lot of things like, infrastructure. You need to have a place to house these animals. You need to have like, medical supplies and doctors and staff and all of these other people who are going to basically uh, handle the day-to-day operations of the organization, right? And all of this is going to cost you money. So in this section, you need to kind of mention all of this, like give them like a step-by-step process that first I'm going to do this, then I'm going to hire staff, then I'm going to, let's say, I don't know, partner with animal food organizations so that you have a steady flow of stuff to feed these animals. And then, next I'm going to handle transportation and like, finding foster homes. Whatever the sequence of your project looks like, the execution sequence, this is a great place to put it because here is where the biggest decision of giving you the grant is going to happen. How well you, excuse me, how well you are organized, so that if your funding partner, if the donor is giving you money, they can also be organized according to that, and they can decide whether giving you that money at this time, at this pace, kind of works for them as well. Does that make sense? If anyone has any questions as of now, feel free to put it in the chat or just unmute yourself. Are you guys seeing any questions in the chat?
No
I,
questions
I,
at the moment.
I have a
Go on.
question, but not sure if it might be fitting in this particular scenario. But
No problem.
are we do the let's say do the company that we are getting the funding from knows about demographics, or should we have to explain on the funding?
You will have to explain. That's a great question, by the way. You will have to explain the demographic you serve because it's not always that that company is going to know about who your target audience is, right? They may know it, but it's always good to mention that and also include like the connection you have to that community of people you're trying to serve, right? So it's not, don't just give them, oh, this many percentage of people are suffering from this, and hence I need to do this for that community. Show why you're passionate about that project in a way, and how you are connected to that demographic and why you're doing this. I think you can mention this in the why section, because that's where you're basically kind of explaining, like Sarah said, you're explaining a lot of the why of your project. So the demographic can go in the why section. And the how section is basically the execution of your project. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so I think if there are no more questions about the how section, I think we can move on to when?
The when. So this is where we can take all the information that we have compiled and we can now outline the next steps that you will be taking. This when section really expands on the how and the achievable section of your goals. In order for your audience to get a snapshot of your needs, you would need to include a concise project timeline, resource requirements, budget, and we can also attach any additional documents that the application requires you to, or that would make your case more clear. Like, such as you were saying, Fernando, if you wanted to do like a demographic analysis, something like that, we could attach that here. So with that said, let's go back to the Danforth Animal Rescue. Once again, the prompt is at the top of the slide. Thinking of this animal rescue, what are some timeline dependent goals that they would, or steps that they need to take in order to reach their goals? And like we said earlier, they want to help 1,000 animals. We want to provide medical services to 1,000 animals by June 2024. So is there anything we can think of that goes into that they would need to do beforehand?
I believe they'd have to secure a location. If permits are required or they have to rejig the rentable space, all that would have to be addressed. So capital monies would be used for A, B, C, D, and make sure that they're following all the bylaws based on the animal care and within the neighborhood in which it sits before you even get started.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura. So in this example, since they do want to expand their operation, if they do need to rent out a new location, something like that, we would definitely include that here. And we would want to give a date as well. For example, we'd want to have that done by April 2024. And with that, that you bring up, we could also kind of factor that in, since that's a cost, we would factor that into like their budget. And as I mentioned, in the section is also where we can include relevant documents. So we could include your expense within the budget, like a sample Excel budget spreadsheet that we could include in this application. Suzanne says location, outreach, and fundraising. Fundraising is a great one for sure. I was also thinking perhaps they would need to order like additional medical equipment since they really want to grow their practice. And perhaps they want to have this ordered in, once again, by April. Anybody else? Okay, so thank you for that. And once again, by really outlining these goals and including any relevant paperwork that may be necessary, it just shows that you've done your homework and you are serious. Like, you're not just dreaming with your heads up in the clouds, but you have an actionable plan here that you will be implementing in order to achieve your goals with their funding. So now that we've got this outline that speaks to the what, the why, the how, and the when of your project, let's talk about writing.
So writing can be a daunting process, but if you understand the importance of writing and how writing can influence people, you'll be able to communicate your ideas better. How? That's what we're here to show you. But first, we want to know what you find most difficult about writing through this Zoom poll. So we'll be sending out a Zoom poll shortly. And what do you find most difficult about writing? The options are organizing your thoughts, grammar and punctuation, starting to write, writing concisely, communicating your ideas clearly, and being confident. So go ahead and click which one most applies to you.
You can also select multiple answers if you're having trouble with multiple things.
Okay, I think we can end the poll now. And I think,
We still have a few more people.
okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry, sometimes I go behind of everything.
No problem.
But one of the things that I forgot to ask, it's regarding the media and promotion. Did media and promotion, let's say, for this particular should be included in the grant, or is something that people who provide grants will not be interested or include as a part of the budget?
That's a very good question.
I can take that over if you'd like.
Sorry?
I'm sorry.
I can take that over if you like in terms of response.
Oh, sure. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
All right. So media and promotion. So are you referring to like being able to develop flyers, to use social media, to pay for maybe bus campaigns, like all those types of things?
Yes, because I like, for example, I've been thinking in some applied to some grantings, right? But most of the things or the need that the, let's say, a specific area might need, or a neighborhood might need, they also need some promotion. Yeah, it could be flyers and like any type of media.
Yes. So those would usually be eligible costs. How you explain it would be important as well. So sometimes marketing and promotion, it could be labeled, or outreach, if it's a social sector application. But marketing, promotion, outreach, those are tends to be the terminologies used, but they're usually always an eligible expense to reach your target audience. And what I would recommend when asking for those funding or those funding items, line items, is that you specify maybe some of your strategy on why you need to use those mediums to reach your target audience. So if you're dealing with youth, for example, maybe emails and certain types of promotion aren't as relevant, and maybe social media is a better avenue to take. And so you need extra funding to pay for subscriptions or tools that will allow you to use social media as your marketing, outreach, and promotion plan. Things like that. Does
Thank
that
you.
answer the question?
Yep. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the poll now and hear the results.
Hey, thank you guys for your responses. It looks like we're all in the same boat. When I started writing professionally, I also struggled with organizing my thoughts and communicating my ideas clearly, which were the two most popular choices in our poll. But luckily, we're here to help you address these difficulties so you can become a more confident and effective writer. Amongst the vast array of problems you face every day, dealing with people is probably the biggest, a challenge that extends into nearly that of every profession and every facet of life. John D. Rockefeller, who was and still is the richest American of all time, famously said, "The ability to deal with people is as purchasable a commodity as sugar or coffee, and I'll pay more for that ability than any other under the sun." Much like any commodity, dealing with people is something to be acquired, or in your case, a skill to be honed. And in today's digital world, writing serves as a crucial tool for effective communication. Consider the job of a lawyer. In this domain, technical knowledge is, no doubt, of paramount importance. However, as Rockefeller reminds us, the highest paid lawyers aren't necessarily those that memorize the most citations or serve as wells of technical information. Instead, it's the lawyers who possess not only expertise in their field, but also the ability to communicate effectively, of whom find the most success. True mastery lies in combining your technical knowledge with the ability to articulate it eloquently and to incite interest with every stroke of your pen, or in most of your cases, probably click of your keyboard. Why do you think some grant proposals are selected for funding, while others are not? Well, it's true, a lot of it does come down to merit, but what is originality and quality if it's not articulated as such? I'd argue that the presentation of one's ideas is just as, if not more important than the idea itself. In fact, according to a study conducted by Peter van den Besselaar and Charlie Mom in regards specifically to the importance of writing in grant proposals, aptly titled The Effects of Writing Style on Success in Grant Applications, the authors concluded that writing style does certainly affect success. Quote, the applicants who are better in combining analytic text with narrative writing score better. The importance of being able to write effectively could not be understated, especially in your grants, of course, but also in everything else you do. The ability to persuade, to inspire, to motivate through words is a skill that truly opens up doors and can transform your requests into actions. So, as we delve into how you can hone such a skill, remember the sheer importance that Rockefeller placed on communication. And remember that we are not merely writing, we are partaking in the art of persuasion, by which we may influence and hopefully win the favor of our readers.
Thank you, Vitek. So now that we understand the importance of writing, let's begin to look at how we can craft an effective, persuasive message. Effective communication is a cornerstone of success in various fields, and the 4 C's of communication provides a valuable framework to enhance your message. Utilizing these 4 C's is clarity, conciseness, conviction, and cohesion ensures that your communication is not only well received, but also impactful. As we walk you through each of these 4 C's in depth, we will be using our earlier example of Danforth Animal Rescue, as they are currently writing their grant proposal. So in this second workshop here, we will be breaking down a paragraph answer that answers the question, what is your project's timeline? Each C will look at a different sentence, and we will ask you to tell us how they effectively utilize each of the 4 C's. And then, as usual, you can always use the chat or unmute yourself. So let's now begin with our first C. Clarity. To be clear in your communication means that you are expressing your ideas in a way that is easily understood by your audience. It involves removing ambiguity, using straightforward language, and ensuring that your message is tightly focused. You can achieve clarity within your writing by being specific and precise in your language, avoiding jargon or technical terms that your audience may not be familiar with, logically organizing your thoughts so that you're presenting a coherent message, and using relevant examples or visual aids to illustrate complex ideas. So in this following example, Danforth Animal Rescue is answering the timeline of goals section, and this is their topic sentence in their paragraph answer to the question. They have worked hard on their answer to ensure that it follows the described principles of clear writing. It reads, Danforth Animal Rescue provided comprehensive medical care to 400 abandoned pets from 2021 to 2023. The proposed timeline of goals for Danforth Animal Rescue includes completing the expansion of vital medical services, spaying, neutering, and vaccinations for 1,000 animals by June 2024. I see that there's a question in the chat. Just before I address that, I just want to ask you all, based on this topic sentence we have here, what about this answer works well? How have they used clear writing? If you remember, they have been asked, what is your project's timeline? And this is the beginning of their response.
Just to add here, do you guys think that this what's mentioned over here is clear enough for an organization to understand, or at least begin to understand the timeline?
Yeah, because this is a topic sentence, and then we'll be adding more sentences as we go. But is this clear enough to you? Do you think this is clear enough to answer the timeline of goals? Yep, Suzanne says this sentence identifies the goal and the timeline. Fernando, you were saying?
Yeah, it's very clear. It shows the goals, the timeline as I mentioned, and yeah, it's clear. It's clear.
Right, thank
And
you.
even mention the specific services that they're going to provide over.
And one thing I really like about this answer is it's quite precise, right? Like as you were just saying, Fernando, it mentions the specific medical services quite concisely, quite precisely even, without going into too much detail. So it gives you just enough information, and if they think you need more or they have more to share, they will do that as they go on with their answer. Okay, so thank you for those answers. Those are definitely all elements that makes this sentence a great example of clear writing, because here the animal rescue has constructed a straightforward, focused answer that precisely communicates the specific medical services and as well as their actionable goal of aiding 1,000 animals, as well as Suzanne was saying, the timeline by which they will be completing that project. What we achieve when we provide such a clear topic sentence or just clear sentences with just the right amount of information in general, we enable the grant reviewer to quickly identify and assess key information. And this leaves them with the impression that your organization or you as writer is confident and can clearly communicate the objectives. So while this is a great start from Danforth, we can further improve the statement. So we're going to see how in the next principle.
So in this slide, we just highlighted the stuff that kind of talks to the clarity of this paragraph. Sarah, just before we move on, we addressed all the message in the chat, right?
Oh, Fernando had asked, can we use casual language or this might not sound professional? Fernando, were you talking about in like when you're answering these grant application questions?
Yes, it's already responded. It was more in terms if we use specific terms or like technical terms or not, but you guys already say it.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
Perfect. Moving on.
Okay, so conciseness. Concise writing involves conveying information in a brief and to the point manner without unnecessary details or elaboration. This ensures that your message is focused and it saves time for both the sender and receiver, so you and your grant reviewer. You can achieve conciseness within your writing by eliminating redundant or irrelevant information, using short sentences and paragraphs, getting straight to your main point without excessive background information, and by prioritizing key details and omitting the unnecessary ones. Once again, let's take a look at Danforth Animals Rescue's response to the question. Here they say, Danforth Animal Rescue provided comprehensive medical care to 400 abandoned pets from 2021 to 2023. Danforth will complete the expansion of medical services, spaying, neutering, and vaccinations for 1,000 animals by June 2024. So based on what we just talked about what makes sentences and paragraphs concise, what about this answer works well?
It works well because it provides a timeline based on when are they going to start in 2001 with 400 abandoned pets and ended up by like probably by the end of the budget on June the 2023 with 1,000 animals being served.
Yes, thank you. And if you notice, Fernando, as you were speaking, you basically said the whole sentence and nothing more, right? Like you recapped the sentence that's already written. I think what that shows is this sentence has really removed any redundant or unnecessary information, especially as this is a topic sentence. We are just introducing the grant reviewer to what we will be talking about. So this is the intro, and then the rest of our answer will get into the nitty-gritty. It's not required in your topic sentence. And as I'm looking in the chat, I see Suzanne says that it is simple and clear. Exactly. It gets straight to the point here. And once again, it's omitting unnecessary information. which allows the grant reviewer to learn more about the organization, what they hope to accomplish by what date, and they can read more about that as they continue reading the paragraph. This straightforward style of answering these questions, it really communicates a thorough understanding of the question that's being asked, and it shows that you're able to effectively communicate your organization's goals. Let's now move on to the next principle.
Just before that, in this slide, we kind of wanted to show how we reduced the redundant words and kind of made the sentences tighter or like more concise, just by removing unnecessary words.
Yep. So as you can see from that, or you could see from that, you still get the
Sorry.
same message. We didn't cut out anything that was essential for the reader, right? We just got straight to the point, and the reader still has the same information. I think this really shows why revision is important. Like, we might be writing our first draft thinking, oh, all of this is important. This is everything that they need to know. But is it really? Or can we cut it down and they can there's a better way for them to understand our true message without us kind of over explaining. So I think that shows that. And now we can move on to the next principle.
Conviction is defined as one's firm belief in an argument, which makes any written content persuasive. By showing conviction in your writing, you display confidence that what you have written is true and correct. For writing with conviction, adopt an affirmative tone as well as an active voice. Without conviction, writing could sound poorly developed and not to the point. Take a look at our example. Through secured funding, Danforth Animal Rescue will execute its goal of bringing medical care and shelter to an additional 1,000 abandoned pets annually. What are some of the ways that conviction is shown in this example, where the writer is clear in their thinking, showing firm belief that makes the statement persuasive? If you haven't already caught, conviction is shown in the example by reflecting a commitment of what they will do to help support animals. Overall, conviction is shown displayed in the example through reflecting a commitment of what they will do to help support animals. To conclude, in this example, Danforth commits to achieve its goal by using an affirming phrase like through secured funding and a decisive verb like will and execute. It reflects conviction in your writing. Let's now move on to the next principle.
Thanks, Isabel. Okay, so cohesion. Cohesion essentially means that the ideas in your proposal flow logically without getting off topic or feeling out of place. This includes proper grammar, spelling, transition words, and avoiding run-on sentences so readers don't get confused while they read your proposal. Let's take a look at the examples that we've been working on. So you can see them combined all together here alongside some new information. So I'll just read it out. In response to increased pet abandonment driven by the COVID-19 pandemic, Danforth Animal Rescue provided comprehensive medical care to 400 abandoned pets from 2021 to 2023. Danforth aims to complete the expansion of vital medical services, spaying, neutering, and vaccinations for 1,000 animals by June 2024. Through secured funding, Danforth Animal Rescue will execute its goal of bringing medical care and shelter to an additional 1,000 abandoned pets annually. Now, feel free to unmute yourself or type your answer in the chat. What do you think makes this paragraph cohesive? Do any sentences or maybe phrases stick out to you? If nothing comes to mind, don't worry. It is harder to find good. Oh, yeah.
Well, it shows let's say an issue by the first sentence in response to increase pet abandonment by COVID-19, then provides a solution. And I think it's the second or third row. And also, like, as it says, it's cohesive because it closed the main idea by saying that applying to that funding, they will provide by securing them, but they will provide a service to 1,000 abandoned pens annually. So it goes from the root of the problem, let's say, and develop the idea, and then ended up with asking for the grant.
Beautiful,
sense?
concise answer. That was amazing, honestly.
Thank you.
Exactly what you said. We start with an issue, we go into detail, and then we conclude with the key point, the real point about this funding, how it impacts in the long term. So, definitely, let's take a look at, yeah, we've taken a look at the information. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll break down the paragraph to show what each sentence does. Yeah, right there. The first sentence introduces the issue and the organization's response, just as you said. The next sentence gives details about the current proposal's plan. So it really goes into the how, and the timeline really needs to know exactly those details. And again, we have to maintain these clear and concise points. So we're taking everything that we learned earlier and we're making it cohesive together. In the final sentence, it concludes by explaining how all of this improves Danforth in the long run. And I see Susan in the chat saying the reason for the increase of animal rescue. Absolutely. So this first sentence, it actually adds a little bit of conviction again, because you're making it timely and very responsive. So notice how instead of starting each sentence by saying, Danforth did this, Danforth did that, and Danforth will definitely do that, we use phrases and words like, in response to COVID, we did this, or through this funding, we can do this. Not only does the paragraph follow chronological order, but the information in each sentence does too. So this was the last of our 4Cs. Thank you for making it to the end. Again, the 4Cs are extremely important. Any plan that you propose can make or break whether you get funding, and that all depends on how confident and skilled your organization sounds. But now that we're done, we won't just throw you into the deep end. Isabel will share some resources that we've created so that you'll have something to take home, so to speak.
Thanks, Em. As promised, we will share these slides with you along with the Organizing Your Grant Proposal worksheet, a guide to writing main statements, and an effective writing worksheet. These resources will assist you through your grant writing process. Before we go, we will also take questions.
Yes, do you have any questions for us? I'll give you a second to write anything in the chat, or just feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, it sounds like there's no questions, which is very good. Thank you for being here. Byron and Anda will share these slides and the notes and the resources with you, I believe, through email.
I have a question. I'm always like behind.
No
I have a
worries.
question. Like in terms of applying to a grant, I'm getting familiar with this. And there's one situation that I apply personally for a grant, right? For an idea that I have for developing in one of the towns outside of the Toronto area. But one of the things that I struggled with was to make the idea sound like cohesive, and so I was asked to rephrase or elaborate the petition for the grant a little bit more. but I couldn't get get it together. How can how can I get this happen without sounding that I don't like I don't have an idea, let's say this way. Do you have any like resources that I can like following up regarding this, or do you guys offer like a workshop or seminar about like grants that have been rejected but have a second opportunity to reapply? Probably soft topic sorry.
Well, I can offer immediate advice from my own opinion. When you receive feedback, so first, obviously, try and highlight exactly what that feedback was and what they're asking you to change in your proposal.
Mhm.
But a good way of making things clearer and easier is having a bullet point outline of your idea and showing those logical steps like I need this in order to do this, and the result will be this. Doing kind of like little graphs and maps and brainstorms on paper can help you really clarify your writing before you turn it into full paragraph form.
Okay. Thank you.
And remember, bullet points are not excluded from your proposal. So it's okay to sometimes you have character limits and things like that within proposals, but if you're having a hard time presenting a clear picture of your idea or of your needs or whatever the case may be, it's okay to use bullet points within it as well, because it keeps it simple, it keeps it clear and concise, right? So that might be another option for you. I don't know if there's other questions.
Yeah, there are a couple of more questions. Susan asks, how does this situation show, suppose for the surrounding businesses? Susan, would you like to elaborate a little bit more? Oh, we lost her.
She fell off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, in case we'll get to her once she's back. But yeah, we had another question by Octavia. For the what section, could we also reference to responding to the findings in a social development plan or needs assessment rather than specific situations? Absolutely. Please include any research that you've read, any kind of white papers, any kind of best practices that you've researched. Put all of that in your in your I think these would go better in the why section than the what section, just because it kind of goes very well with why you're doing this. And adding any kind of research and needs assessments and things like that kind of boosts your the credibility of your proposal, and it shows that you've done your research, you know about this thing, you're not just just applying randomly. Yeah, you actually have a backing for your proposal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great response. And also in some proposals and in some circumstances, situations, you can attach your some of your literature that you found or any reports that you're referencing in an appendix. Just it all depends on the type of grant or the level of grant that you're applying for. So keep that in mind as well.
Camilla, is that how you pronounce your name? I'm sorry.
Yes, hi, good evening. How are you?
Yeah. Good, how are you? Good evening.
I'm doing well, thanks. Hey, Brian.
Hey.
So I have a question somewhat in the same sense that we were speaking of. So for instance, if you're writing a grant for like a grassroots and it's about like the community, the Jane Finch community, would you suggest that, let's just say it's for gun violence or something of that sort, would adding a news article or a study to the grant make it better?
Well, I think yes. I think if you kind of tailor it with why this is important for you and how this, if let's say you're citing a like a news incident or an incident that was covered on the news, then say how that kind of triggered you to go ahead with this proposal, right? So that becomes a huge part of your why. It's because you are responding to something that's going on in society that you would like to address. And that's a very good connect, your personal connect with your project. So you can definitely include it that way. And of course, any other media, like it's not just even news. Like if you see things like on social media, things that have impacted the community in a way and you're trying to address that, I think you can include those as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And so, yeah, again, remember, sometimes you can even put appendices or attachments. If you can put the articles directly. Again, there's sometimes some limits to what you can add. And so in your why or in your needs piece, you can say the Toronto Star reported or CP24 reported, and you're putting a link or just a reference to it. And this is why I want to propose a book club or whatever it is that you want to propose, right?
Right.
So you can use that evidence, use the current events, use the incidences that are promoting you to do whatever it is that you want to do.
Perfect. And then I have another question, but it's not as, I don't think it's going to be as detailed, is in writing a grant, do you feel that within the budget, instead of saying $500 is for food and snacks, or $500 is for food and snacks allocated to, for instance, 10 kids times, like for a daily budget, like what's better for me is to be broken all the way down, or just say $500 foods and refreshments?
Yeah, so usually that is specific to the funder. The more detail you can have, the better, right? Like sometimes you know those details or have an idea of those details. So I would always encourage you, if you do have that, to put it, especially if they ask you for it. Sometimes they don't, they just want general figures. But if they are asking for that, or even if they're not asking for it, but you're allowed to put it in there, then I would break it down, because it shows that you're very intentional with budget. And it shows you have a clearer plan on what this is going to cost to implement, right? And that gives a bit more confidence to the funder to say these people know what they're doing, or can be responsible for the amount of money that we're giving them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We have Suzanne back. Suzanne, we wanted to kind of check with you if you could elaborate your question a little bit more.
Yes. The question that I actually have is regarding the situation with the Danforth with the rescue with the pets. How does that, if in any way, support any of the surrounding businesses? In terms of, does it drive business? Would that help to drive business towards other businesses in terms of supporting? And how would that maybe also in turn help businesses in the surrounding area to support the rescue shelter?
So it may not be as applicable to our example, But if your grant proposal kind of talks to how how your whatever work you're proposing will help surrounding businesses, then for sure include it. But I mean, our example situation with Danforth doesn't really call for that. But yeah, if you're working
Yeah,
on a project that
I am.
could,
I am.
yeah.
I
That's
think
that's
maybe I should have
amazing.
just, yeah, maybe I should just phrase it around what I'm doing in terms of
Yeah.
community. But I wanted to know if that actually would apply like just liberally to a variety of different things. So I guess it doesn't. So
No.
in my community with the grant that I'm doing, it asks those types of questions, like how what I'm doing in my community in terms of the grant, how will that be able to support surrounding businesses and drive business towards them, and
Okay.
basically for them also in support of what's going on within the community of what that grant is.
Yeah.
If that
So
makes sense. I hope it
yeah,
does.
yeah. Is that the City of Toronto Main Street or something like that grant? Do you know the name of that grant?
The grant is known as the Community Activator.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's the
Yeah.
okay.
So it's just basically getting like a lot of things in your community done. For me, it's around greenhouses, things of that nature, like the beautification of the community. Because I'm a bit of a landscaper as well, so I'd like to see a bit more of that. And I know there's a lot of work that goes into that. But one of the questions that was asked was how would that benefit surrounding businesses? And how would that actually help more traffic to flow towards those businesses? So that I find a little bit tricky because I'm not quite sure how I should phrase that.
Yeah, great question. Um, Sometimes, and it depends, right? So there usually is a purpose to why they're asking you that question. So if they're interested in from helping the surrounding businesses be promoted, and that's why they want to fund grants that will have some connection to doing that, they'll ask that question. So, for example, if you're having a beautification project, so landscaping improves the visibility of that community. It improves the overall look. That could drive business to those surrounding businesses, right? Like, who wants to go to a business that has a lot of graffiti in front of it, or garbage in front of it, or unpruned lawns in front of it, right? Like, so your project could lend to the beautification of that community, which will then attract or make those businesses more visible, right? So it's sometimes you have to kind of play with the idea to see what is the greater impact that your business can create, I mean, your grant or initiative can create. And that's how you make those connections. Or maybe you're going to ask those businesses, based on your project, what can your project lend to their business, right? That might be a little bit more footwork, but it's also another thing that you can do. So maybe you don't know right now, but a part of your grant will allow you to ask those businesses how your initiative can support, or you do that ahead of time and then write your grant, right? Is that helpful at all?
I thank you. I have another question. Sorry, guys. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear
Are you
you.
hearing me?
Yeah.
Okay. I have
Yes.
another question. Because with how the project will be able to support the surrounding businesses, I look at being able to purchase some of the things from those businesses.
That is also another way of demonstrating how
In
you make
terms of like soil, rather than buying all of the soil there, I would buy some of the soil. Pardon?
Yeah,
I'm
that would
sorry,
be
I'm outside.
yeah, no worries. I think that would also be another way of demonstrating your support for local businesses.
Right,
So that would qualify.
right.
Um,
But how would
but
I be able to drive traffic towards them? Would that be something I could put in terms of showing the support through, like, say, flyering?
Yes, Suzanne, I think that would be a great way. Honestly, I was just thinking about, since you initially asked it about Danforth,
Right.
just to kind of humor the idea, I think was it you who mentioned perhaps we could do like an adoption type of service at Danforth? I don't know if it was you, but someone had mentioned like some type of adoption services. So say we had that going on at Danforth and there was like a pet-friendly cafe next door, coffee shop. We could go to that owners and say, hey, like we're running an adoption event. It'd be great if you could put some flyers up for us. In return, like we will tell our customers to say a certain like keyword or something like that, and they can perhaps get 10% off at your business. And then you're kind of driving traffic both ways. This is just like a quick example I thought of. And if you would need to, if you're doing this with a bunch of businesses nearby, then perhaps you could include this in your budget by having a category for promotional materials. And then, you know, you can specifically mention what those promotional materials are and where they would be going.
Yeah. Yep. And in the same vein, if you're using the example that the writing professionals have come up with, what is the greater impact of an animal rescue in a community, right? If there's coyotes walking around the streets around these businesses, it's not as safe, right? So the greater impact is that they'd be removing, somebody gave the example of dangerous animals or animals that could cause harm. That is also one of the ways that you'll be indirectly supporting some of these businesses as well. But the driving traffic piece, I think what was just presented as an example is an amazing way of doing that. So Sarah came up with a pretty good idea on the fly right there.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another one. Fernando asks, now that you guys mentioned, how true is that important to use keywords while applying to grants? I've been told that some organizations receive hundreds of applications and they use automized tools to discard applications.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll give you an insider's tip. And this is more specific right now to the city of Toronto, for example. They may get 200 applications, they can only support 30.
I was going to say City of Toronto.
Okay. So their process is a little different. The first thing they do is go through proposals to make sure that all the criterias have been met. So have you completed the document to its fullest? Are you an eligible organization or group or, you know, grassroots group, whatever the case may be, individual? And so they shortlist in that way, right? After that, they have a review panel or committee that then will take, they'll probably divide it and then they'll have to go through them individually and shortlist from there which ones they feel connect best to the goals of the funding. Now, I don't, unless it's a larger call out where maybe it's they're expecting a lot more applications, they would tend to maybe use the technology. But most of the time, they're using a grant review committee to go through those grants. Like I've done it before myself, and we got hundreds that we had to go through. And so what I will tell you as a funding or grant writing not trick, but just a useful tip. Grants usually come with information sessions. Attend those, right? Attend the information sessions because they tend to tell you the best way to apply and your best chances of success, right? You get to ask your questions there that are more specific. They also tend to have, especially with the City of Toronto, opportunities to contact a reviewer directly before you submit if you have any questions. So that's also another good thing to do. Visibility is important. If you have a counselor in your area that you can share your idea with that that works within the city, they'll tend to endorse. your plan if you've met with them in advance and talked about the fact that you're looking to apply for this funding. That works on a provincial level, federal level, and a municipal level. All right, so just find the appropriate political representative to kind of share that idea with as well. Now, your ideas can be great, your proposal could be amazing, and sometimes you still won't get it. And don't let that discourage you. Just chalk it up to now you have a great document that captures your idea and that is ready for another opportunity to submit, right? Because sometimes these things, as you know, disheartening as it may be, it's political, right? It's organization versus organization. Sometimes the bigger ones win over the smaller ones. But then there's grants that are very specific to like grassroots groups or businesses or whatever the case may be. All right. So just this opportunity here that you're learning from the students is really just to hone in on that skill of being clear, being concise, using good strategies in your writing to convey your message strongly. And that's kind of what I'll leave you with in that terms. Hopefully that answers your question and doesn't make you too confused.
Hey, I think we're almost at time. If there are any more questions we could answer.
I do have a question, another. Like for example, in terms of sending a grant, and once the grant is out, like for example, the application is out, is it possible to just, I don't know how to like explain, but like for example, I'm gonna put it like in a role play. I create a grant. Sorry, I apply for a grant. I develop an idea. My grant wasn't applied, but there was another organization who has, let's say, 90% similar the idea that I apply. And there's no unattainable way to know that I did notice that they read my grant, but I'm pretty sure. So is there any way to I'm not saying like a legal action, but like if there's any way to approach, let's say, these entities and explain them or get my voice out in terms of having that idea but not being able to apply it because I probably have communication problems or I don't know, like something like that.
Yeah. That's
It
a very
happened to me a couple of
specific.
times.
Oh, a couple of
Yep.
times.
Yep.
Okay. From the same funder?
No, but it's most from a town,
Oh, from the same
from
town.
the politicians in town.
Right. So as I said earlier, sometimes these processes are very political, right? Now, it's very hard to prove that people have stolen ideas or that you know, there was any malintent when you've submitted your grants. But one of the things that you can request from usually that you can request from some of our funders is that they give you feedback on your grant, right? So you can book a meeting with them and then they will give you feedback on your grant. And if you find that there isn't anything that would justify them not approving your grant, especially if it's so similar to somebody else's that you're familiar with, then you could talk to again, approach your counselor for that ward or for that area, neighborhood, and ask for a more transparent process in these grants. You can attend your council meetings and ask for a different process on how they review and approve grants. That's within your rights. You may not be able to get the individual grants like scrutinized or reversed, but when we're talking about the system behind it, you can attend council meetings and request that you feel like these processes aren't fair and or aren't transparent enough, and then they'll start looking at reviewing how grants are approved and the process that it takes to do them. This happens at the city of Toronto from time to time. You know, other municipalities who aren't as experienced with it always tend to adjust. Yeah. And so I mentioned speaking with your ward council, like that's usually the best way because they'll bring that concern to the table. And those are public, so you can be there and depute as well for yourself if you'd like.
This could
And
be by showing some sort of proof, because it happens to me a couple of times that I submit some for projects and say like, hey, that was my project, and it was like developed, like for example, I submitted in August, and I see it like happening in October, by most of the time, but by it's some sort of like nepotism, I believe. It's by politicians or by like and it's, well, I know that the ideas that I have, and they're not mostly unique, because it's based on the input that I have as a community worker from other resources, right? But I find it kind of odd the fact that I apply, but some of the time is not happening. But thank you for the answer.
Yeah. We can connect outside of this platform, and then we can talk a little bit more if you'd like on some strategies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I think that'll be all from us. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today, and we hope that this session was helpful and you guys have some ideas to now go and write those beautiful grant applications. Once again, we will be sharing our presentation along with all the notes that we took along with all of you, and a bunch of other resources that you can use as reference or as brainstorming while you're working on your grants. Thank you guys, and have an amazing evening.
Thank
All
you
right,
guys
so
so
this video
much.
will also be made available as
Thank you,
well. We're just
everyone.
gonna do a little bit of editing, but yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Great evening.
Thank you.
Bye,
Take care,
folks.
everyone. Bye.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.